first and foremost is what we call volume profile. This was invented by the CME and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange back in the 70s or 80s. There's actually a CME handbook that was written in the 70s or 80s on volume profile. It's a very um, it's a bit of a dry read, but it is considered the Bible on options on volume profile. And volume profile is simply plotting volume instead of here at the bottom of your chart across based on time, meaning how much volume was traded at a specific time. What you're looking at is how much volume was traded at a specific price. And you basically have these little bars, and it tells you at a specific price how much volume was traded. And when you look at volume profile, you typically reset it on each trading session. So each trading day, you reset, the volume that was traded at that specific price. You can look at volume profile across the days, meaning you can look at volume profile across all 4 or 5 days that I have on my screen. But predominantly what you're looking at is volume profile on a single trading session. And what you're trying to do is at least for the purposes of this, right? Volume profile, there's multiple uses for it, but at least for the purpose of this, what you're looking for is the shape of the profile. You're looking for profiles that have a bit of they exhibit two types of shapes. They either exhibit kind of a bell shape type shape like we have here in the first 2 trading sessions, where the profile is kind of evenly distributed across what we call a point of control, or kind of a price at which, there seems to be a somewhat equal amount of volume traded below that price, an equal amount of volume traded above that price. And it's kind of distributed what looks like a bit like a bell curve, or at least a bell curve on its side. And what that tells you is that there's a bit of equilibrium in terms of market buyers versus sellers, and they're kind of oscillating between across one point, and it gives you that kind of bell curve like shape. And you really see that within the first hour or so, is this kind of shape starting to play out. And then on the other side, you also have shapes that are more flat. Like as you can see here, this is a much more flatter profile as opposed to the bell curve shape profile. And when you see that in the first hour, and actually when you look at this particular, when you look at this particular chart here, this is really the first hour, right? And you can see that the bar, the volume profile within that first hour, it doesn't form that bell-shaped curve. It kind of is just a flat profile. And what that gives you a good sense for is that, okay, it looks like one side of the market is maintaining control and either pushing the markets higher or lower. And simply price action will give you a sense for whether it's buyers that have control or sellers that have control for that day. And the way you think about volume profile is that if you start to see this bell curve shaped reading in that first hour, that kind of gives you a good sense that at least for the first hour, there isn't a strong side that has control. You have that bit of that equilibrium. Those are opportunities to be an option seller for that day, versus when you have a flat reading and you can clearly see control by one side, those are opportunities to potentially be a buyer of options on those days. Now, this happens to be the sessions from yesterday and the previous day. And as you can see in the first hour or so, you do maintain. Yesterday was actually a bit of an interesting day, because for the most part of the day, for probably until about 2 p.m. or so, you did have that bell curve, bell-shaped curve. It was only at about 2 p.m. or so, and we'll take a look at some of the other indicators today, where you saw all of a sudden one side of the market maintain very strong control. So, this is something that does change throughout the day. This is not like you can just look at the first hour and set it or forget it. This is one of the things about day trading, or one of the things about trading 0 days to expiration, is that you kind of have to be in front of your screen all day. So if you find yourself, hey, I don't have the time to sit in front of my computer from 9:30 to 4, just keep in mind that 0 days to expiration strategies may not be suited for you, because these are things that do change. Sometimes they change on the dime, and sometimes they change very late in the day. Yesterday from 9:30 to 2 p.m., very bell-shaped curve profile. You really kind of had a good sense that there was a very good sense of equilibrium, and something at 2 p.m. just shifted. And you can see it from the other indicators that I'll show you here today, but also on the volume profile, you started to see it around 2 p.m. The profile started getting really flat, and by 2:15, it was much flatter than that. And you start to see this huge upside volume. And when you see it in conjunction with the other indicators I'll show you here today, that's really when you can start to see, okay, something happened around 2 p.m. where clearly some type of institutional buying came in and it was incredibly strong into the close. And that is, for those of you that were nimble enough, potentially time to get out of your option selling and maybe, even though there's not much time, looking at buying an option that could have been quite fruitful yesterday. The day before, you had the profile that was pretty flat by about 10:30, 11 o'clock. Clearly showing buyers were in control. And then by 2 p.m., 1:30 or so, you started to see more of a bell-shaped curve develop again, which was giving you a good sense that perhaps that momentum was gone. And when we look at the other indicators as well, that was also showing you some of that momentum here that kind of carried in the middle, started to die down towards the end of the day. So, but the volume profile is dynamic, it changes, but it's the shape that gives you a good sense for whether any side of the market, buyers or sellers, have control. Does that make sense to everyone? Please type 1 into the chat window if that makes sense to you. If you want to learn more about volume profile, in my opinion, is an incredibly powerful tool, not just for day traders, but for longer term traders as well. Looking at, from my perspective, volume based on time means almost nothing because time is sort of a very arbitrary thing that we've invented. Volume based on price is far more valuable. You can look at it on a longer term chart. It's something that you can use it on OptionsPlay as well. Our charting package allows you to create volume profile charts. They're useful for longer term trading, looking at kind of where there are peaks in terms of the volume profile, where there are troughs in terms of volume profile, gives you insights into support and resistance for longer term trading. So this is really something that you should be aware of. And there's a handbook written by the CME that's considered the Bible of volume profile that I do recommend. It's a dry read. It's a couple of hundred pages, but it is considered the Bible on volume profile.